The storm rolled across the Blue Ridge Mountains with a low, animal-like growl that rattled the windows of the small rental cabin. Emma had arrived only an hour earlier, just as the sun dipped behind the ridgeline and the sky turned the color of cold steel. She had planned this trip for months, a solitary retreat, a break from the noise of the city and the pressure of her demanding job. She wanted silence, stars, and crisp mountain air. But the moment she stepped out of her car and looked at the cabin crouched against the trees, she felt a heaviness she couldn't quite name. The cabin was older than the pictures online had shown. The logs were darkened with age, the windows were foggy, and the porch dipped slightly in the center like it had been carrying too much weight for too many years. The forest behind it was dense, taller, darker, and eerier than she expected. Thick trunks rose like pillars, and the underbrush was so tangled she couldn't see more than a few feet into it. Still, she tried to shake off her unease. City nerves, she told herself. Too much caffeine and not enough sleep. Inside, the cabin smelled like pine and something faintly metallic. Not unpleasant, just odd. She set down her bags, poured herself a glass of water, and stepped out onto the back deck. The view should have calmed her. Mountains rolling like waves, treetops trembling in the wind, and the sky slowly fading into night. But instead, her skin prickled. The trees were too still. The forest too quiet. The type of quiet where even insects seemed afraid to make a sound. A gust of cold wind swept across the deck, and she shivered. The storm was coming fast. She went back inside, shut the sliding door, and turned the lock. She didn't know why she felt the need to lock it. There wasn't a soul for miles around. That was the whole point of a mountain retreat, to be alone. Thunder cracked overhead, the lights flickered, and she sighed. "Please don't go out tonight," she whispered to the electrical system, as though the wires were listening. For a while, everything was peaceful. She made tea, curled up on the old leather sofa, and scrolled through her phone. Rain softened the roof, tapping a steady rhythm that should have been comforting. But as she settled deeper beneath the blanket, a faint sound threaded itself into the storm's background noise. A creak. Then another. Like a footstep. She froze. The sound came from above her, from the loft. The cabin had an open loft space with a bed, but she hadn't been up there yet. Her mind raced. Maybe the wood was expanding with the temperature change. Old houses make noises all the time. She repeated it twice to make it feel true. But the next sound didn't fit that explanation. This one was deliberate. Slow. A single step, followed by a soft scrape. As though someone had shifted their weight on the floorboards. Her heart thudded painfully. She muted her phone. The storm filled the silence. But even under the thunder, she heard the slight, brittle creaking of wood above her. She stood, muscles trembling, and moved toward the kitchen to grab the flashlight she had packed. Its weight in her hand felt reassuring, but barely. She tiptoed up the wooden stairs, each step echoing her shaky breath. When she reached the top, she hesitated. The loft was dim, lit only by the weak glow of a small lamp plugged into the wall. The bed was empty. The floor bare. Everything still. She scanned the room with the flashlight. Nothing. With a shaky laugh, she exhaled. "Get it together, Emma." She turned, and that's when she saw it. On the wall, just beside the loft railing, was a long smear. A handprint. Dark. Uneven. Like something dragged across it. Her breath hitched. She stepped closer. The smear looked old, dried into the wood, not fresh. But it hadn't been in any of the listing photos. Why hadn't she noticed it earlier? Another slice of thunder split the air, and the cabin lights flickered once, twice, then died. The sudden darkness swallowed her. Her flashlight beam shook violently as she forced herself down the steps. She didn't care if the smear was old. She didn't want to be up there anymore. Back in the living room, she took deep breaths. Old cabin. Old stains. Old noises. Nothing supernatural. Nothing sinister. She managed to calm herself until the next sound made her blood freeze. Knocking. Soft. On the back deck door. 3 taps. Then stillness. Her eyes snapped to the sliding glass door. Rain hammered against it, streaking down in gusty sheets. The deck was barely visible, everything blurred through the storm. Maybe a branch had blown into the glass, but the knock had been too clean, too intentional. Slowly, she approached the door. Her reflection warped in the dark glass. Pale. Wide-eyed. She waited, listening. Nothing but rain. With the storm raging, she found herself reaching for the curtain to slide it closed. As her fingers brushed the fabric, lightning flashed, brief, bright, violent. And she saw it. A figure. Standing at the edge of the deck. Tall, impossibly still, its outline blurred by the rain, but unmistakably human. Her scream died in her throat. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, didn't breathe. She stumbled backward, tripping over her own feet and hitting the floor hard. Pain shot through her elbow. Another flash of lightning. This time the deck was empty. She scrambled up, heart racing so fast she felt dizzy. Fight or flight screamed flight. She grabbed her keys, yanked on her jacket, and threw open the front door, only to be slammed by the force of the storm. Rain stung her face like needles. Wind howled. The forest loomed like a wall of blackness. If someone was out there, she'd be running straight into danger. If someone wasn't out there, she slammed the door shut and locked it again. Her mind raced. Should she call the police? There was barely a signal up here. She doubted her phone would hold long enough to get help. But she dialed anyway. 1 bar. Then none. Then one again. Come on, come on. Lightning flashed again, and something hit the side of the cabin with a heavy thud. She screamed, dropping her phone. Another thud. Then another. Like fists pounding on the logs. She backed toward the fireplace, keeping the flashlight trembling in front of her. The pounding moved around the house. Slow. Deliberate. Circling. Something, or someone, was walking the perimeter of the cabin, dragging their hand or body along the exterior. She held her breath until her lungs burned. Then silence. Total, suffocating silence. Emma waited, seconds, minutes, she wasn't sure. The storm began to ease, the pounding of the rain softening, until only distant rumbles of thunder remained. Slowly, she reached for her phone again. 1 bar. She opened the emergency call screen. But before she could press anything, her phone buzzed with a notification. A new photo. Her blood turned to ice. It was from inside the cabin. The picture showed the loft railing, taken from the living room, just minutes ago. Before she could react, another notification. Then another. Photos. All taken from different parts of the cabin. Angles she never saw. Her hands shook violently as she opened the last one. It was a picture of her, taken from behind, standing at the deck door, frozen in mid-fear. She dropped the phone as tears blurred her vision. Someone had been inside. Someone had been watching her. She glanced toward the stairs leading to the loft, and her stomach twisted. A shadow moved, slow, sliding across the railing, backing out of sight. No, 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 please no. She grabbed a fire poker from beside the fireplace, clutching it with slippery, trembling hands. Who's there? Her voice cracked. What do you want? Silence. Then the soft sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. Her breath seized. She raised the poker like a weapon. But the footsteps stopped halfway. The cabin held its breath with her. Then a low voice, not loud, not whispering, but close enough she felt it in her bones, spoke from the darkness of the loft. I've been here the whole time. Emma bolted. She didn't think, couldn't think. Instinct took over. She sprinted to the front door, yanked it open, and ran into the storm. Branches whipped her face. Mud sucked at her shoes. She didn't know where she was going, only away. She didn't stop until her lungs burned and her body shook from cold and terror. When she finally collapsed against a tree, she dared to look back. The cabin porch light flickered to life, and a tall figure stepped out onto the deck. Even from the distance, she saw it clearly. It was the same man from the photo angles. Gaunt, barefoot, his clothes ragged, his face pale and hollow, like someone who hadn't seen the sun in years. He lifted a hand, a slow, almost gentle wave, like he was inviting her back. The forest swallowed her scream. She ran again, slipping, falling, getting back up. Hours seemed to pass, as she fought her way through the dark until the sky finally began to lighten. At dawn, she reached the gravel road near the ranger station. A passing truck saw her collapsed by the ditch, shivering violently, her hair soaked and tangled, her clothes stained with mud and pine needles. They called for help. She tried to tell the rangers what happened. They searched the cabin. They found her belongings, her scattered phone, her spilled tea on the table. They found footprints on the deck, some hers, and some much larger. But inside, Nothing. No man. No signs of anyone living there. Only one strange detail. In the loft, beside the old, dried smear she had seen, was a fresh handprint. Large. Dark. Perfectly outlined. Not hers. The cabin owner claimed no one had been there for weeks. Local rangers whispered that people had heard things in those woods for decades. Seen figures near the tree line. Felt watched. But nothing proven. Nothing official. Emma left the mountains the next morning. She never returned. But sometimes late at night, when she walks past a window or stands alone in her apartment, her phone buzzes with a strange alert. A new photo. Always of her back. Always taken from somewhere behind her. And always accompanied by the same message. Still here.